So in spite of vicious media attacks and many political obstacles, well, 2017 was a very successful first year for President Trump. Now, before we get to the full list that the media will never show you, well, let's take a look at the economy. Stock market is at an all-time high and hit over 60 record closes in 2017 alone. The Dow Jones was up 25%. Over $5 trillion in new wealth has now been created. Unemployment, yes, unemployment at a 17-year low, sits at just 4.1%. And since taking office, President Trump has created 1.7 million new jobs. African-American unemployment, a 17-year low. We ended the year with consumer confidence sitting at a 17-year high. Home prices are up 6%, as is home building. Regulations have been slashed at a historic rate, and the Trump administration cut 16 regulations for every new one that was created. Also, let's talk about GDP. Now, so far under President Trump, we have seen 2 quarters over 3%. Let's compare that with President Barack Obama, the only president in the history of this country to never reach 3% GDP growth for an entire year. And we can't forget about Obama's terrible economy. Millions more people on food stamps and in poverty, 95 million Americans out of the labor force, the worst economic recovery since the 40s, the lowest labor participation rate since the 70s, and the list goes on. Worst recovery since the 40s, lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. And unlike Obama, business confidence is now soaring under President Trump. In fact, the news is so good that even the liberal New York Times cannot even ignore this. Take a look at this headline. I didn't make it up. The Trump effect. Business anticipating less regulation loosens the purse strings. This is exactly what we've been seeing happening all across the country. You couple that with the brand new $1.5 trillion tax plan that is now taking effect, and what you have is a recipe for a Reagan-style economic explosion. You, the American people, you're beginning to see the direct impact of this tax bill. For example, companies like Boeing, AT&T, Comcast, Wells Fargo, and Fifth Third Bancorp all announced employee bonuses or pay increases following that bill. That's real money back in the pockets of the forgotten men and women that deserve it in this country. Take a look, for example, what happened over at, liberal CBS News. They had an accountant crunch the numbers to see how the tax plan is going to impact the middle class in this country. Uh-oh, it didn't come out the way they expected. Watch this.
We wanted to see how folks will actually fare. So we asked households from 3 different parts of the country to send us their tax returns, and then we had an accountant calculate how things will change for each of them.
A single mother who rents a home in Cary, North Carolina, her income last year as an administrative assistant was a little under $40,000.
If she were your client, what would you tell her?
I got good news for you, Marcy. You're getting more money back next year.
Amber and Jason Edwards were also hoping for some good news.
I hope it alleviates, pressure on the middle class. Whether it does or not, I don't know.
I actually think they would pay tax on about $12,000 more of income, but because of the lower rates, they actually end up saving a little bit of money.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised because, well, what you had said, initially, you thought we were going to have a higher tax bill.
Right.
They're not the only ones. Melissa and Lane Lev also expressed concern about next year's taxes.
I'm thinking they're going to be higher.
Overall, he estimates they'll be responsible for nearly $13,000 less in taxes.
Well, that's good.
I like the sound of that. Can I get the accountant's number after this?
So wait a minute. So all 3 families that we brought to you, they're all going to see a decrease in their taxes.
Every single one of those families will have more money in their pocket next year.
Look at that. All 3 families are saving money. The tax cut will help middle-class families. They desperately need it. And by the way, the bill also gets rid of the Obamacare individual mandate, and it opens up energy exploration in Anwar. Oh, the lifeblood of our economy. More energy independence. And by the way, long-term secure jobs at high wages for Americans and lower prices for the entire country. All good. And when it comes to ISIS, President Trump, he has unleashed the the U.S. military, and as a result, letting them decide, all but destroyed the terror group. Look at these numbers from the Department of Defense that the president tweeted out. The military under President Trump's leadership has done more in 11 months to defeat ISIS than Obama did during his last 28 months. And that's just a small sample of President Trump's many accomplishments for 2017. Take a look on your screen right there. Here is a list of President Trump's accomplishments for 2017. Ask yourself, have you heard the mainstream media, the Destroy Trump media, anybody on the left, any liberal ever mention any of these things? Have you heard them talk about how the president's accomplishment and all of these accomplishments have positively impacted the country? Probably not. They want and have wanted from the beginning the president to fail. Now, this is exactly why the media, the pundits, the political elites are predicting a huge, massive Democratic landslide in November of this year in the midterms. But before they get too giddy, too excited, let's keep this in mind. Well, these are the so-called same experts, political experts, who all said President Trump never stood a chance. So maybe they should put a little bit of the pump on the brakes here and not get so giddy. As a matter of fact, it may turn out to be just the opposite. The president, by the way, has created what I am calling a blueprint for victory in 2018. I hope the Republicans in Washington are paying attention. Now, they did get their act together in December. I do give them credit. But they need to do more. They need to keep the momentum going. Tax cuts, that's a great start, but they need to keep, for example, like building the wall, finish repealing the disaster that is Obamacare, keep that promise, replace it with free market solutions, health care savings accounts, health care cooperatives. They should also pass welfare reform. It's desperately needed again. They should cut other wasteful government spending programs. We know the Democrats, they're signaling that they want all kinds of concessions in these upcoming negotiations in coming weeks. Republicans, you need to show some backbone, at least for once. Stand up for principles. Get your identity back. And here's why. You always get the tax cut. You never get the tax cut. You always get the tax hike. You never get the future spending cuts. We always get the immediate concession or amnesty, but you never get the border wall built. You never get the border security. So you Republicans, you need to take this past approach and flip it upside down, because so far it fails every time. So the GOP, you want to win in November? You need to demand that things like the border wall will get built, and built first, before anything else can happen as it relates to immigration. Now, the American people, they need to see 200-300 miles of this border wall built before the election. That will help you politically, and it's good for our security. And the same goes with other issues. That's the blueprint politically for success in 2018 in the midterms. And Republicans, you follow that, you'll be successful. Also tonight, if 2017 is defined by any one thing, it will be the news media's epic fail. What did we hear all last year, the entire year, from the mainstream liberal media? Russia, collusion, 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 Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, that fake news narrative is pretty much completely blown up in their faces after a year of nonstop, breathless reporting, anonymous sources, hysteria on their part. Because so far, up to today, zero evidence of collusion between President Trump and the Russians. So now the media, they've got to latch on to something quick. They're not going to admit they're wrong. So the new narrative of the liberal media is that conservatives actually hate the FBI. They hate law enforcement because of the bias that we're exposing in the Russia investigation. Watch this.
It is astounding to see conservatives acting like the FBI of all organizations is some kind of liberal deep state, horror show.
The message is, don't look at or think about what may be under investigation. Let's find whatever we can to undermine the pillars of the respect that we tend to confer upon institutions like the FBI and the Justice Department.
There's only one institution that really has been tainted through these months, and that is the Trump presidency. It's tainted by the president's lies, by his disrespect for American institutions operating under the law.
The career civil servants at the FBI and in the intelligence community are working as hard as ever, but this can't be good for morale.
Well, that's the new narrative. Conservatives, this is laughable. Republicans hate law enforcement. And you know why it's laughable? Because the liberal media, They are not the people that respect law and law enforcement, and they've been that way for decades. We'll explain in a second. But first, I want to educate all my failing colleagues in the media that have been wrong so often. Now, if you had any sense of real law and order in our constitutional republic, you might investigate Hillary Clinton and, yeah, the numerous felonies we know she committed, if you care about it. You should maybe look into her top aide, Uma Abedin, and her criminally mishandling of classified information in those emails. And if you in the media, if you really cared about truth at all, maybe look into this. And that's Mueller's merry band of Democratic donors who, let's see, contributed, only to Democrats, politicians like Obama and Hillary and the DNC. Imagine for a second if it was a bunch of Republican donors that were investigating through a special counsel Hillary Clinton. Yeah, you guys in the media, you would be foaming at the mouth on a nightly basis.